Welcome to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast.
Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast. With me today is Harrison Bard, CEO and co-founder of Custom Cones USA. Thank you very much for joining me today, Harrison.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. It's my pleasure. Before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us. And by any of us, I mean, well, pretty much just myself, at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com. I guess you could get producer Alex at cannabisequipmentnews.com, but probably best to just reach out to me. You can also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. Harrison, I like to start with a little bit of background, and especially since you're a co-founder. How did you get involved? How did you first get involved in the cannabis industry?
So I set off to be involved in the cannabis industry. It was something I always wanted to do. So when I took my first job after graduating college, I chose recreational state, Washington. And pretty much like every day at work, I was thinking of like, how can I quit and what business am I going to start? So I didn't know what exactly I was going to do, but I knew I would be in the cannabis industry. And then I've met someone at work. I was at Amazon, and my co-founder, Frederick. Every day at lunch after work, we were just brainstorming like, what can we do to get out of here and get into the industry? We joined a bunch of networking events, meetups, but ultimately we had this idea to come up with a cannabis-derived blunt wrap and set off to make that happen. And then by learning about blunt wraps and paper science and making paper and then getting that into a producer processor in Washington, we became exposed to pre-rolls and cones. Eventually, we started multiple businesses because we had quit Amazon with no income. And so we're like, all right, let's just do this little side business, all cannabis related. And then Custom Cones USA started growing as the pre-roll category grew. And then we really helped bring more options to the pre-roll market. We helped bring more accessible machinery to get producer processors to make pre-rolls at scale, better quality, cheaper, with less labor. So we helped the pre-roll sector grow, and when we grew with it, as well as a bunch of great companies came in and shifted pre-rolls from being an afterthought to actually like a key product in the category. And it's been growing ever since.
Why did you know that you always wanted to be in cannabis?
I mean, I know I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, a business person, and just seeing everything turn recreational, it seemed like a once in a lifetime opportunity. Like, how often do you get exposure to a category that already has demand, pent up demand, and then all of a sudden the floodgates open up and now it's legal and you could make a business out of it. So I just remember watching Colorado and Washington legalize when I was in high school and knew I wanted to be part of that and capture some of that demand.
Do you still operate the other small businesses that you guys started, or did you sort of roll those all into Custom Cones USA?
So everything's now rolled into Custom Cones USA. Some of the projects like the cannabis-derived blunt wrap is on hold. We do have a couple wheels spinning in the background of how we're able to make that product at scale, distribute it in either a state-by-state market, or how we get to do that once you're able to ship between states. But Custom Cones USA is definitely the main focus now.
Okay. Is that why you kind of put a pin in the project, just because you'd essentially have to set up manufacturing in each state because it couldn't cross state lines?
Yeah, in order to make the paper product at scale requires a lot of, heavy capital expenditure, a lot of custom equipment. And then depending on what scale you want to make it at, it could be in the millions of dollars of equipment range. And with that amount of money to produce a high quality paper product, you would have so much excess capacity for any given state that it just didn't make sense. So then we did figure out how to make it more on like a batch, handmade process. But the economics weren't quite there yet. And then Custom Cones USA, in terms of like selling pre-rolled cones, blunt wraps, machines, and packaging, that started growing at a significant rate where we needed to put all of our attention towards that.
Well, as you'd mentioned, you quit your jobs. You definitely took one heck of a risk. What were the early days at Custom like?
So the original days was just, a few of us. We started in our living room at first. And the reason why the company's name is Custom Cones USA is because we only sold custom cones at the time. So we first started off only selling custom branded cones. We had nothing in stock. And then as people in the cannabis industry are operating on thin budgets, there's not that much forecasting. Orders come in on a whim. So people were calling us and they were like, "Yeah, custom's cool, but like what do you have like right now that I could buy?" And we had nothing. So then eventually we started getting plain unbranded cones and stocking them in our living room, in our closets, and then driving to like CVS or Walgreens has like a partnership with FedEx, and then giving it to the photo department at CVS or Walgreens. And the boxes said pre-rolled cones on the side. No one is ever dropping off like 10 boxes to the CVS shipping section. So like the employees were very confused, and we moved from the living room to a small storage unit, no heating, no air conditioning. So brutally cold in the winter, really hot in the summer, no bathroom. And then we graduated to a warehouse with no proper office space. So still freezing cold in the winter, and then slowly have continued to grow from there.
The nature of cones, do they need to be sort of like climate controlled so that way you don't have any issues with the paper integrity?
So not as much on the rolling paper side. I mean, within reason. So they cannot get wet.
Mhm.
I don't know. I mean, if it's in a room that's like at 80, 100% humidity for a long period of time, a rolling paper could potentially grow mold, but the rolling papers are pretty resilient. But hemp wraps is definitely something that you need to factor that into. So if the hemp wrap is stored in a too dry environment, they'll dry out. They can be re-moisturized. So even if that does happen, like a lot of companies based out of Nevada or Colorado, it's bone dry and their processing rooms are super cold. They're not climate controlled in terms of like humidity control, at least. So you can re-moisturize the blunt wraps no matter what. But if they become too moist, so like if you're in Florida and it's really, humid out, the blunt wraps can suck up that moisture in the air and grow mold. And then at that point, there's really nothing you could do unless you're going to remediate those blunt wraps, but definitely would not recommend that. And I don't think many people are doing that.
So when did you start to see sort of the explosive growth? Was it once you started putting products in your warehouse so that way you had it on hand?
Yeah, that definitely helped. And then our goal, and it's still our goal, is to be a one-stop shop and be the foremost experts in the pre-roll space. And that's definitely something that we've achieved and continue to double down on each day. So at first we started off with just the custom branded cones, then we brought in stock cones. We were the first B2B company to sell pre-rolled blunt cones. So like you as a consumer could have gone and bought like a single or a couple packs of pre-rolled blunt cones, but we were the first company to offer them in bulk for businesses. So that was a big innovation. That definitely helped grow sales. And then we just went to every single trade show and found the best equipment out there. So for the pre-roll cones, we are a direct manufacturer, but for the machines, we don't manufacture any of the machines. What we do best is find the best machines, or machine manufacturers find us because they trust us and they know we're experts in the pre-roll space. We vet those machines, we make sure they're good. Oftentimes, these machines are being invented for the first time by small entrepreneurs like ourselves. So we'll work with them, give them feedback, either from firsthand experience when we're using the machines in our demo room, or we'll give them to trusted customers who will use it for 8 hours a day for a couple weeks and give us like the good feedback. And then we give that to the manufacturer. So we're really close with our equipment partners, all the machines that we sell. And we've, cultivated all of the key pieces of equipment that a pre-roll company would need if you're just starting off, if you're a larger company that's scaling, and then even if you're an MSO or LP that's producing millions of pre-rolls per month, we have the entire range of machines, from top to bottom for that.
Was it sort of a natural evolution to diversify from cones into machines? And then you're even in packaging now.
Yeah. So it's always just like, what does the customer need? That's definitely something we learned from Amazon. They're a super customer-centric company, and their goal is to be the most customer-centric company in the world. And we took that to heart, and anything that the customers asked for, we were willing to do. We were a super small, scrappy startup, so, why not? But yeah, so, they asked for packaging, we got them that. So either found partners in the US that could drop ship it and then eventually bring it in from overseas if that was the most cost-effective way to do it. And then, yeah, I think we would probably first start off with just pop top tubes and labels. Then we added glass tubes. And then, multi-packs were going to come about anyways, but we really like to think that we helped pave the way and made multi-packs more accessible for pre-roll companies. So then we started developing and stocking a ton of multi-pack options that were in stock. You could ship same day, no minimums, just one box, which typically has like 100 to 200 multi-packs in it. And it made it really easy for farms to create multi-packs, which now multi-packs make up, I think, almost 40 to 50% of total pre-roll sales. Whereas when we first started, that number was closer to, I think, like 10 or 15%.
And you helped push that forward just because you had availability.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there wasn't that many multi-packs to start. There's definitely some companies that developed multi-packs, like packaging companies. And then we've tested a bunch. Some of them are horrible. There's like big multinational packaging companies that are trying to get into the cannabis space. And you'd be surprised how they could spend hundreds of thousands of dollars developing unique packaging options, and they just don't work at all. They're not easy to label. They're not the right form factor. They don't hold the right size or number of pre-rolls. So we just like we do with the machines, we qualify that these are actually good items, and then we bring them into stock. And then there's also multi-packs that we've developed overseas and then have brought those in to keep in stock.
How do you vet potential partners, both on the equipment side and like on the packaging side? Just because I feel like, there are so many options out there. And if you don't vet them in some way, you might wind up spinning your wheels a lot in QC.
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely made mistakes. You just got to put the time in and you have to be willing to do the work yourself. So, we're meeting with these machine manufacturers a lot of the times, pretty much every time we get them to send us a machine for us to test. So that's pretty much a bare minimum, is that they're going to supply us with a machine. If they're not willing to send us a machine to test for free, it's a red flag. They're not confident in their machine. And then we use it. So, we don't have access to commercial sizes of cannabis, but we'll get really nice, high quality, sticky hemp, and we'll grind it, we'll sift it, we'll pack it into cones, we'll run it through whatever machine it is, and we'll use it over and over again to teach ourselves how to do it. And then we create videos to teach our customers how to use it if that item's good. And then we really listen to our customers, and like the first couple of customers, if they have issues, we'll immediately, compensate them, give them a refund, get the machine back, and give that feedback to the equipment manufacturer. And then a good partner listens to that. If a machine manufacturer is pushing back and like, oh, that's a small issue, they don't care enough or they don't understand how the item's going to be used. And then we at least try it, and then we cut it there and we move on.
Yeah. How often are you kind of creating new relationships and severing old ones with partners? Is it every day?
No, it's definitely not every day. There's not people inventing machines at that sort of pace, but definitely on any given year, we're launching a handful of new machines, and out of that handful, one or two don't end up working out, or
Okay.
they don't work out right away, and we have to give that machine manufacturer, significant feedback, and then the high quality ones take that feedback to heart, and they go to work and they make those improvements. And yeah, those things happen throughout the year and pretty regularly.
So you obviously are motivated to keep growing and diversifying. What's your next target?
So the next big thing for us is freshness in the pre-roll space. So that has something to do with how you manufacture the pre-rolls and how you package it. So the next big thing we're bringing to the market is humidors, to not only take care of like the blunt wraps, like I said, during the manufacturing process, but also for storing pre-rolls once they're done being manufactured, as well as packaging options to help maintain freshness. So we have a line of humidors coming where you could keep the blunt cones right before production, make sure they're rehumidified. And then even if you take them out and like the employees go to lunch, they really should grab a new box and put the other half used one back in the humidor and let them reacclimate. Just a couple hours in like a really dry environment like Nevada is enough for you to want to, grab a fresh batch. And then a big issue that cannabis companies face is they don't have the best grasp on demand forecasting and the
Mm.
supply chain. And it's not necessarily their fault. It could be on the dispensary level or just the fact that there is so much supply. It's hard to move through everything. And in order to be the most efficient, they try to, produce pre-rolls nonstop and maybe just for like a day at a time or a week at a time. And they bring in a crew and manufacture enough pre-rolls to last them for who knows how long. And if you produce enough pre-rolls to last you for more than a month or two, you run the risk of them becoming old and stale. And then by the time someone's ready to buy it at retail, they look at, depending on the state, if the harvest and package date's on there, something that's like 6 months to a year old, and you really don't want that. But if you're able to store those in a climate controlled environment, there should be little to no degradation in the quality of the cannabinoids in the flower. So not only can you use the humidors to keep the blunt wraps fresh for manufacturing, for the ease of manufacturing to avoid them from cracking, but then you could store your finished pre-rolls in there before they get sent out to retail so that their terps are still there, the flower is not overly dry and going to burn too harsh. And then just like how you see with high quality hash rosin, those dispensaries are stocking and selling the hash rosin out of refrigerators. And a high quality dispensary, like that's the de facto. Like they won't put nice quality hash rosin anywhere but in the refrigerator. And those dispensaries that are in markets where there's not demand for hash rosin, they just don't have it because they don't want to buy the refrigerator. It's not going to move fast enough. So like they just don't have hash rosin. And so the same thing is going to be true for high quality pre-rolls, especially infused pre-rolls. Those are going to be sold out of humidors, just like you would go to a cigar shop and they have a walk-in humidor. You would never buy a high quality cigar that's just been sitting in a cardboard box for who knows how many months.
Mm.
But it doesn't matter if it's been sitting in a really nice humidor and it's been taken care of, it's going to be fresh and the quality is going to be maintained.
Do you see like humidors in cannabis retail kind of being widespread, or will it be more of a differentiator for a select few?
So right now it doesn't exist. I think once we introduce these to the market, it will be a unique aspect to some higher quality dispensaries. And then in 5 years, it's going to be the norm that if you're selling, especially like hash holes and hash infused pre-rolls, those are going to be sold in a humidor, unless you're going to like a really budget dispensary that doesn't even sell those type of products, then those, won't or may not. But even like a full flower pre-roll, and then this is an opportunity for a brand to really stand out. Like when you go to certain gas stations, you see like the Red Bull refrigerator. So there's an opportunity for companies to work with us, buy custom branded humidors, and give that to the dispensary for free. Or like maybe they don't own it, but give it to them as in-store merchandising. That's definitely going to make their product stand out. It could be custom branded on top or on the front of the humidor, and then the product's fresh. Bud tenders are going to say like, this is the freshest, this is the highest quality. So to start, it's going to be unique, and then eventually it's going to be the norm for sure.
It sounds like you don't have so much of a transactional relationship with your customers, but it sounds more like consultative.
For sure. Yeah. Like if you just want to buy packaging and you want to, go online, you could find a dozen packaging companies that sell anything and everything, but have no expertise in the packaging. You could get someone on the phone and they'll tell you how much it is, and they'll probably be able to read off the website and tell you like, certain specs, but they don't know much else beyond like how to check you out. When you call our team, like everyone is really deeply educated in the entire step of the pre-roll process. So oftentimes pre-roll companies maybe don't know what size cone they should use. Like, so they know they want to go to market with dog walker, or like they want to do like a 0.25 or a 0.35. They're like, what's the best cone? And then what machine do I use? And then potentially they come to us with issues like, I can't get this amount of flour into my cone. Like, what's the issue? And then so we could troubleshoot that. And there's a couple different factors. Like is it your grind size? Is it the moisture content? Is it the machine and how dense you're able to pack it? So yeah, we're able to troubleshoot all those issues, and our team like just has the expertise to ask the right questions where the customer wouldn't even know where to start.
Do most of your customers, are they using equipment and automation, or do you still have a fair amount of customers that are still hand packing?
So most people are using a machine. You could still potentially classify it as hand packing, but it would be a tabletop machine, like a
Hmm.
King Cone or a knockbox. That is the most popular and the most widespread. There definitely are companies that are using automated pre-roll machines, and there's many companies that have invested in those, still use them, but oftentimes still use tabletop machinery for certain strains, especially if they're co-packers. There's certain companies that know the quality you can get in an automated pre-roll machine is tightly defined. And if the strain, if its optimal moisture content is above what that automated machine will take, or the particle size is above what that automated machine will take, or potentially they want to put it in a unique form factor, like a glass tip cone or a tube shaped hemp wrap with a wood tip. It's difficult, not impossible, to get those to work on automated machines. And then just depending on how much you're going to produce on it dictates whether or not it makes sense to take that machine, offline, change out parts. Every hour of downtime on that automated machine is money wasted for that company if you're not running it at full efficiency. So yeah, I'd say probably still 80% of companies out there are using a combination of tabletop machines and then hand finishing on pre-roll manufacturing.
You mentioned video tutorials and training that you offer on your website. You talk about being very customer centric and looking at Amazon's model. Are you trying to be the Amazon of cannabis?
No, we're trying to be the premier pre-roll supply company in the space.
Okay.
So we're 100% focused on pre-rolls. If the packaging could be so we work with a bunch of companies and we help them start to finish on their pre-rolls, and then they're like, "Oh, can you also make this box for our gummies?" Like we could of course do that. But our focus is on pre-rolls from every step of the process, from grinding to sifting to packing into cones to infusing it. There's multiple different ways you can create infused pre-rolls. We want to help expand the category into the number of sizes of pre-rolls, the number of filter tips, the number of paper types, and then all of those combinations could be mixed and matched, creating, exponential amount of pre-roll SKUs. And then we want to help companies package them better, increase their branding. We do display solutions in terms of like POP displays. So yeah, so we want to be maybe the Amazon of pre-rolls, but um, Amazon kind of, at least now, kind of is going in a direction where they're kind of selling anything and everything, and there's a lot of low quality garbage on Amazon, and everything that we sell is really vetted to be high quality. So maybe not like the best analogy.
Understood. Understood. And I've definitely ordered some of those lower end items on Amazon. Just like, how do they even sell this? Um, what's a POP display?
So POP stands for point of purchase.
Okay.
And like a good example is maybe like 5 Hour Energy. You're at the gas station and they have like a little box, and they can come
Okay.
in different shapes and sizes, but essentially it's a way to get your item right in front of the customer, right at the point of sale, to really help bring attention to your item and increase sell-through rate.
Okay. Do you know the product breakdown between uh, cones, machines, packaging? What are you selling more of these days? And where is demand surging and where is it maybe lagging?
Yeah, so there's definitely a little bit of a lag on custom packaging and custom branding. At least over the past few months, or like, half a year to a year, certain markets have really taken a hit. California is really struggling, Colorado's struggling. A lot of states have reached a peak. There was a lot of cannabis tourism, and states like Colorado, where now like every state around them has medical or recreational. People aren't traveling there to buy cannabis anymore. So they reached an artificial peak because of that, and then plus also COVID, the stimulus checks and people had time off. That also created an artificial peak. So companies are hurting. Tax wise, there's still like 280Es financially, causing some strain on companies. So we've seen a lot of businesses pull back on custom branding. In one sense, it's financial. In the other sense, it's also an issue with demand forecasting and planning. Getting custom branded items requires, months of preparation and planning. And then even if you do that, if you sell out, there's nothing you could do. You can't get custom branded packaging immediately. So we're definitely seeing a shift away from custom branded into unbranded. And then where we're seeing demand grow is in the premium tipped products. So everyone's trying to differentiate and come out with higher quality pre-rolls, infused pre-rolls, and just stand out in general. So the glass, wood, and ceramic tip pre-rolls are getting really popular. And then we keep those in stock. They could still be custom branded. And then those comes in rolling paper, hemp wrap, cone shape, tube shape, and then, any combination of those variables.
What do you think is making those premium tips so popular?
It's really the surge in infused pre-rolls.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I did we went to New Mexico, so I just looked at Arizona data because that was available at the time. And out of the top 200 best-selling pre-roll SKUs in Arizona, all 200 were infused pre-rolls.
Well,
And we're seeing in certain markets, infused pre-roll sales are making up 50 or more percent of total pre-roll sales. So if you're a cannabis brand, or if you're a pre-roll, if you were selling pre-rolls and you're not currently selling an infused pre-roll, that's something you should get on right away. And if you're a cannabis company in general and you're thinking of like expanding into pre-rolls, an infused pre-roll is a perfect way to start. I could see a future where like 80% or more of all pre-rolls sold are infused to some degree, be it with just a little bit of keef, a little bit of like terpene extract to just add a little bit more flavor and potency. But that's definitely the shift. And those infused pre-rolls command a higher price point and are also geared towards customers who probably have a little bit more to spend. And the premium filter tip does create a premium experience that just like flows along with a concentrate being in there and having that be a premium product.
are you all B2B or are you some B2C as well?
So we've been B2B pretty much up until the last couple months, and then we just launched a consumer line of pre-rolled cones and blunts and smoking accessories. So that's where we're just doubling down on our expertise. Like we really do know the most about paper science, about filter tips. We have economies of scale in terms of like our pre-roll manufacturing and all of our raw materials procurement. So instead of expanding into like vape pens and concentrates, which, is a booming industry, besides pre-rolls, vape pens is the fastest growing segment. We double down on our expertise of pre-rolls. So we launched DaySavers as our parent brand and a couple other sub-brands, Blunts to focus on blunts, and then Smoke Temple, which the first product is a pre-rolled cross cone. And then Smoke Temple will have more than just the cross cone. It's going to be like all sorts of very unique and premium pre-roll smoking accessories. But yeah, and then we also took our expertise in terms of compliance. So on the B2B side, we're by far the most strictest in terms of all testing and compliance related things. So we test for the highest number of heavy metals, pesticides, and microbials. And we do that, one, because we want to sell a high quality product, but two, every state and country, and considering Canada, has different regulations. So we just draw the strictest one from all of the things. So if one state only tests for 14 pesticides, but then this other state has like a couple of additional ones, we just test for the most number of everything to the strictest standard across the board so that we don't have to worry like, oh, these SKUs could only be sold to this state and these SKUs can't be sold to Canada. And then we have all the other compliance documentation in place in terms of like COCs, traceability documents. We could do batch testing for companies that really require the strictest level of testing. And we noticed that that was a huge gap in the consumer space. So smoking accessories are pretty much not regulated at all. Tobacco is regulated by the FDA, or yeah, I think the FDA, but like rolling papers, like there's pretty much no rules there. You don't have to list the ingredients, you don't have to test them to any standards. And we learned a lot about this when palm leaf blunts became popular.
Mm.
So palm leaf blunts were exploding, so we started bringing those in bulk boxes for customers to make palm leaf blunts filled with cannabis, and those were a nightmare. Sometimes they would pass, sometimes they wouldn't. Sometimes they would pass when filled with flour. Depending on the client's flour, that might push it over the edge anyways, where some, would still pass. So those palm leaf blunts have heavy metals because they're getting sucked out of the soil or potentially pollution, getting drifted onto them. pesticides being sprayed directly onto them, or if, the farm is swearing up and down they're not spraying pesticides, they're drifting over from another farm nearby. And then the corn husk filter tip is a natural medium, and it's crunched up into a roll stored in a dark place. So if there's any level of moisture left in the corn husk or in the leaf, it's a breeding ground for microbials and mold. So like any which way you look at it, those products were causing issues. And we were like, how are, consumer brands selling these? They must have, and they do have the same issues. And so you'd see like reports. There was like a big issue in Colorado where there was recalls on all companies that were using these palm leaf blunts because they were failing for any number of these things. So we brought our level of compliance and paper science and transparency to the consumer space. So DaySavers, all of the products are tested to the same level as cannabis is, where, that's the way it should be. If you're a consumer and you're trusting that you're buying high quality flower that's tested for all these things, and then you put it into a blunt wrap that has mold and heavy metals, like what's the point? They're like blindly trusting that these products are safe and there's really no regulations. So we placed all of those regulations and those standards on ourselves because we have that expertise and we're doing it for our B2B customers and are now bringing that to the consumers through DaySavers.
Well, it makes sense. Was that a hard decision for you to make, just because there has to be quite an added expense for all of that compliance and testing, that maybe might bump up price points just so that way, you can cover the costs?
It wasn't a hard decision for us to make. It's definitely a big expense where I could see a lot of other companies would just pass on it or not do it to as high a level or not do it as frequently. We test everything together and separate. So like we'll test the rolling paper raw material, the filter tip. We're making sure the inks are compliant, and then we'll test finished products, and then we'll randomly retest them throughout the year. So you could definitely do all or some of those or skip on certain ones, and it's tens of thousands of dollars and adds up, depending on how many SKUs and what you're doing. And our whole goal is to have like the widest variety of pre-roll products. So we have like hundreds of different SKUs. Everything's getting tested to the same level. But for us, it was an easy decision, or like there was no other way around it. Like we really care about our customers and we care about our reputation and, the health and safety of what we sell. At the end of the day, like we don't want to get in trouble and we don't want to hurt or harm anyone in any way. So for us, it is an easy decision, but definitely a cheaper company that doesn't really care and is just trying to make a quick profit would skip on that in a heartbeat.
No, I definitely see it as a long-term investment in a company. And for me, that's a differentiator that if I'm looking to do business with somebody, that's an investment that tells me you're kind of in it for the long haul rather than just kind of not profiteering, but, trying to get paid now.
Yeah. Yeah. And then like, again, it kind of goes back to your point of like, it's not just a transactional relationship. It's really like we're partners, like we're trying to help you scale. Our sales team isn't commissioned, so they're not going to try to sell you the biggest automated pre-roll machine because they can make a little bit more sales commission on it. We're trying to like understand what stage your business is at, what are your goals, what are your challenges, and how to help grow your company. And we have the knowledge of like what state you're in and what's compliant and what are the limitations. And so our compliance manager will tell them, like, especially in Missouri, it was really crazy. Like they made chromium such a low level that pretty much everything was failing. And so like our compliance manager was working hand in hand with every single Missouri company to figure out how do we create a paper product or what filter tip or what options are going to work to get passed in your state. So we're not just selling you something and then absolving ourselves of all responsibility and be like, that's up to you. It's definitely a partnership with our clients.
Ever since you launched DaySavers in the B2C category, what has been the response?
So people love it. We're making unique products. If you just try to sell rolling papers, no one's going to carry your product. They're like, I'm selling raw and elements and whatever all day long. Why would I take your rolling paper? So we've set out, and it's something that we have experience with on the Custom Cones USA side, is creating unique and innovative products. So some of the initial ones we launched with was the cross cone. That's something that if you wanted to roll yourself would take you a pretty long amount of time, and it's probably going to be poor quality. So we make that super easy, and it's really, really exciting for people to share that smoking experience with their friends. We launched glass tipped and wood tipped products. We have flavored wood tips, which we launched with our consumer line before we launched with our B2B side. So we have actually sweetened and vanilla flavored filter tips, where a lot of other products say they're flavored, like there's like flavored rolling papers, but there's no flavor. Like you could smell them, and like maybe if you lick it, you taste a little bit, but when you're smoking it, you're getting zero flavor. Whereas with our flavored wooden tips, the flavor is infused and on the wooden tip. And so like when you put it on your lips, you're tasting it. And then if you're smoking with a bunch of people, you don't really want to like lick it a little bit. But if you're by yourself or with a loved one, like you could be a little bit more liberal with how you're handling the wooden tip in your mouth. And like if you're okay licking it a little bit, like you really get like an explosion of flavor. So like these are game changers in the industry. And this type of innovation we're bringing to our B2B customers as well. So those are going to be coming in stock soon in rolling paper and in blunt wrap varieties.
Are the tips like infused with an extract?
So they're infused with like actual flavoring.
Okay. With your expertise of the pre-roll market, are there any parts of the market that remain underserved?
Hmm. I mean, it's our goal to serve them. So if it's currently underserved, we're working to figure it out. So like the humidor and the freshness was definitely a problem that we heard and observed.
Okay.
And no one came to us with that solution or saying, I need this, but we understood what the problem was and we figured out what's the best way to address that. There is some issues with like loading the cones into machines.
Mm.
So pretty much, people are just trying to optimize every part of the manufacturing process. So, they're hand loading the cones into the top trays. So there are a couple companies that we're working with and developing technology to help better fill that automated, no matter what machine you're using. So you don't have to be locked into any format. We're trying to develop a versatile machine to load the towers of cones into the filling tray of any machine. And then closing the cones. So if you're still using tabletop machinery, that is now the slowest part of the process. Is you've made the pre-rolls, you've metered or you've assumed the right amount of flowers in it, and the top everything is tamped properly. So we've also helped develop tamping tools to make sure that the cones are perfectly dense from top to bottom. And so assuming you don't need to tamp them anymore, now what's the best way to finish those pre-rolls at scale? So the fill and fold machine that we saw on our website has a folding attachment, which helps you tamp and create a Dutch crown finish on all the pre-rolls, like one row at a time, but you could go through 121 in a matter of minutes. And that's been the biggest challenge that companies are looking to solve to help reduce their labor costs and really scale their output.
Do you think the best solution to that is the Dutch crown?
Yeah, so in terms of like why pre-rolls canoe, we're working on a video and a blog to educate people on that. A lot of people blame the rolling paper. Like we'll send them samples of our products and they'll swear like one tastes better than the other. There is some taste differences, but the paper is not the main driver of taste. And then sometimes they'll be like, "Oh, the paper ran. Like your cons, aren't good." Or like I tested one, like the white paper and the brown paper, and like one ran, the other one didn't. And it's definitely not the paper. It's the particle size, it's the compaction, it's how you light it. More often than not, it's how you light it. So if you look at a cigar smoker and how they light a cigar, they like a proper cigar smoker on a really fancy cigar is spending like a minute lighting the cigar and not taking the first puff until it's perfectly lit all the way around, where your average cannabis consumer is immediately leaving the dispensary and lighting it as they're puffing on it from just one side. And if that pre-roll gets lit from one side and doesn't get lit all the way around, it has a really high chance of running. So there are reasons that a pre-roll could run, even if you light it properly, but more often than not, it's user error, and people are quick to blame the flower, the person who packed it, the paper, but that's often not the case.
Well, and it's got to be difficult because the consumer just is going to blame the brand and then try something else, right?
Yeah. So that's where it's all about education. With DaySavers, it's about teaching people that. So we're not just like a lifestyle brand, but we're like we're borrowing a lot of the same things that has made Custom Cones USA successful. Is like we're also educating people. So, rice paper, that's a marketing gimmick. So we're, coming out and telling people like what is paper actually made of? Like how do you measure paper? Like you don't measure rolling paper in thinness, you measure it in terms of weight. It's called GSM, grams per square meter. So like we're teaching people that. And then like, we just released the why pre-rolls canoe and how to fix it video for DaySavers. So teaching people the problems probably you and how you're lighting it. And it could be the pre-roll. And if it is the pre-roll, like here's the reasons that it might be. And if you're hand rolling it, here's the things that you maybe did that caused it. Or if you bought it from the store, here's the things you could potentially assume the farm did wrong. But more often than not, it's user error. And yeah, it's just all about education.
Working with so many different suppliers, do you often run into supply chain challenges?
We've definitely ran into supply chain challenges. Yeah. There's only a handful, like really like less than a handful of hemp wrap manufacturers in the world. And they're notoriously out of stock, behind, on vacation. So that's caused a ton of supply chain issues. Same thing with packaging. A lot of packaging is sourced from China, and their child testing is either non-existent or potentially fake. If it's not tested in an American lab, you really run the risk of it just being like a fake lab, or just they're paying for a certification. Definitely, if you're seeing companies saying they're ISO certified, like that's something that could easily be purchased if you're not getting that done by a professional, reputable organization, is BS. So yeah, there's a ton of supply chain or vendor qualification issues that we go through, but we have a whole team dedicated towards that. And typically, and definitely now that we have the consumer brands, anything new that we bring on, we first are testing on ourselves and we bring in and we get samples of and we test on our consumer products and make sure that it's high quality before we bring it to our B2B customers who they're putting their whole reputation and they're placing larger orders and putting, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of flour and oil into these products and packaging before getting it off to retail. So we test everything thoroughly, just like as we do on the machines with ourselves on multiple rounds of samples before we'll bring it in and offer it to our customer base.
Because you have such a deep knowledge base of the segment, do you find yourself still being surprised by consumer or your clients' needs or demands?
I mean, we're always learning for sure. And I still keep contact with customers as much as I can, still doing sales calls. People reach out to me over LinkedIn asking for advice. Typically, they hear about us from podcasts. So hopefully, if you're listening to this and if you have any questions about starting or scaling your pre-roll process, feel free to DM me on LinkedIn and I'll get on a call with you and I'll help. Eventually, I'm going to hand you over to our sales team, but I still want to make sure that I'm helping and serving our customers and learning firsthand from them. Like, what are the challenges that they're going in? Like, we're not a cannabis processor and manufacturer, and we're not operating under the same legal and regulations that these companies are, and we're not in every state. So, like, you have to learn from your customers. And so, yeah, we're always staying curious and learning and constantly being surprised by what's changing and what new laws pop up or what the next big consumer trend is.
How come you're not in every state?
Well, we sell in every state because we're a packaging company,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
like, we personally don't know what it's like to be a California operator versus
Oh, gotcha.
operating in Missouri. And, we try to stay up to date on all the packaging. We definitely know the compliance regulations, and then we try to stay as up to date on packaging regulations. We always make the disclaimer we're not a lawyer, so like we cannot tell you if your labeling is 100% accurate, but like we'll definitely guide you in the right direction. But yeah, we don't know the nuances of like, what a New York operator is going through and like how the legacy market is potentially eating into their market share or their profits. So that's what I meant by that.
Gotcha. I'm pretty sure everyone knows that legacy market's eating into market share in New York right now still. But they're trying to fix it.
And
Working on it.
California. Yeah, and everywhere else.
Well, you kind of mentioned how people can get a hold of you, and I really appreciate you taking the time, man. But is there anything else that you want to share, or anything in particular you want to make sure the Cannabis Equipment News audience knows about yourself or Custom Cones USA?
So definitely, you feel free to reach out to us anytime over any medium. You could DM me directly on LinkedIn. You could hit us up. We have a live chat. You can call us. You could email us. All that information's on our website at customconesusa.com. If you're a retail store or consumer and you're looking just for products for yourself, go to DaySavers.com. If you want to buy in bulk, you could use a cheat code and go to Custom Cones USA and buy like bulk boxes of these things. But for the more manageable sizes, DaySavers.com has all of the innovative products for more normal consumers. You don't need to buy it in like 1,000 or 800 pack. And yeah, we put all of our knowledge and information out on our YouTube and on our blog. So check out our website. There's a blog section. You could subscribe to our newsletter and you'll stay up to date on all the latest information and deals that we're running. And then definitely subscribe to our YouTube channel as well, where we push out a ton of really helpful and educational content.
Well, Harrison, I've found this episode particularly educational as well. So thank you very much for your insight. And I hope we get a chance to do it again soon.
Yeah, for sure. I could spend, an hour talking about any part of the pre-roll process. So just about grinding and sifting, or just about pre-roll manufacturing. So happy to come on anytime and just get really deep into the details on any particular aspect of the manufacturing process or category of machines.
I like it. This episode just became a series.
Yep. Pre-roll manufacturing 101.
Very good. Well, before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use, even a simple thumbs up on YouTube. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. For Harrison Bard, CEO and co-founder of Custom Cones USA, I'm David Manti. This is the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast.